Hello everybody. Thank you for joining me, whether you're watching this live or watching it later on. Today I just want to talk a little bit about the topics in the title, as you may have seen already. One being the discontinuation of Fuji 400H, what my thoughts are, my opinion mainly on whether or not I think the film will come back, and just about the discontinuation in general and the implications of that. And secondly, to talk a little bit about my first impressions of the Contax TVS point and shoot camera, a camera that I recently acquired that I've shot 2 rolls through and just want to give my thoughts on. And on both of those topics, just to gather some of your thoughts as well, which I'm really interested in both regards. So feel free to drop a comment, whether it's live or post stream, just to let me know how you're doing. I hope everyone's been doing well. As I said in my last video, I hope that 2021 is getting off to a good start for everyone. And let me know what you've been up to. How's everything going? I'm always interested to hear. So let's get into it. The first topic being Fuji 400H. So if you're watching this, you obviously most likely know that Fujifilm recently discontinued their, I think one of their only professional color negative stocks, which is Fujifilm Pro 400H. It was quite a popular film stock to some degree, maybe not as popular as Kodak's Pro film lines like the Portra stuff, but it was especially popular with wedding photographers and portrait photographers, probably more so in medium format than in 35mm. I don't know if that's just because wedding photographers tend to shoot more 120 than 35mm, but there is this massive market, whether you're aware of it or not, and I can understand how a lot of people wouldn't be, but there's this sort of demographic of fine art film photographers who are really into this film and people who shoot a lot of editorial stuff. Whereas the sort of consumer market and the enthusiast market probably wasn't as big on this film. And it's quite an interesting thing because when Fuji discontinued it, there was very mixed opinion on whether people were sad to lose this film or not. Myself, I thought it was quite upsetting news and at the same time not too surprising. But a lot of people reacted thinking, well, who cares? I don't even like that film, and who shoots 400H, Portra is better, and so on. But we'll dive into that a little bit more. So again, please let me know if everything's working all right on your end in terms of the audio and video. Let me know if you can hear me all right. And also let me know which side of the world you're watching from, because I'm always experimenting with the times that I choose to do these streams, and I've kind of gone back to a Sunday midday now, which is often a good time for me. But yeah, let me know which corner of the world you're watching from. All right, so let's have a look first of all at something I think is a little bit interesting, which is Fujifilm Pro Film on Instagram. This is their sort of social media hub for the Fujifilm Pro Film side of things, not just Fujifilm as a company for their digital stuff. But this was a fairly active account that they were running just to share photographers' work. And this will give you an idea, if you're not really too familiar with 400H, what kind of look you would get from this. This isn't all 400H, but a lot of it is, and you can kind of spot it immediately with a lot of these sort of pastel, editorial, low contrast, low saturation. That's the kind of film it is, very suited to this style of work here. See that Fujifilm 400H? Without even knowing, I could guess from the photograph that was shot on that film. And this is the kind of look that you'll often see people strive to get when they're shooting 400H. Stuff like this here. Like, it's a beautiful film when you use it for this type of photography. It's a very pastel look, which is the word that's thrown around probably most often, and also terms like light and airy. That's what you can kind of expect from this film. When you develop this film and scan it, it generally comes out quite flat. And interestingly, this photo here is shared by Fujifilm. It's a photo by Jose Villa. He is probably one of the biggest proponents of this film, who really contributed to the resurgence of it, especially in the wedding photography scene. So that's just to give you an idea. That's if you were one of those people who thought, well, who cares? What's the big deal with losing this film? This is why people like Jose Villa have been, massive proponents of this film, using it to huge success, even though he might be recently transitioning to shooting medium format digital. I know that people like him were still shooting a lot of 400H, and he has done some very high-end work, including things like celebrity weddings and other portraiture and editorial stuff. And he's just one of hundreds, if not thousands, of really high-end photographers who are relying on this film. So that's why there was this sort of, I guess, sense of people being really upset and whatnot. I don't know what word to use for it, but that's why it was a bit of a big deal. So I'm just checking through the comments. Okay, good to know audio is good. And Bananarama Gaming, unfortunate to see 400H go. It means there is less choice out there. Yeah, it's always sad to lose a film stock. So all good, very late. Germany, watching from NYC. So glad I stumbled on this right now. Cool, thanks, man. Ahoy from Pilbara, WA. Hello. Since they discontinued due to supply issues, hopefully Poor 400H2 will come out in 18 months like Acros 2. Yep, that's something I want to dive into soon. John, how's it going, man? Thanks for joining. Good to see you again. You're a TVS 2 user here. Nice. Casa de Criso. Loved 400H, but it was way too expensive, so I rarely used it. Also, it had problems in my old Kiev, the one film I still had frame spacing issues with. Yeah, interesting how some films can have issues like that, whereas others don't. But there you go. A few opinions there, including one that I'd heard a lot, besides the fact that what's the big deal about losing this film wasn't even that nice. In answer to that, well, it's nice if it's used correctly. If it's used well and scanned well, and oftentimes that means overexposing it. That was one of the identifying factors of people using this film, is that they would have to overexpose the hell out of it to really get a good result. But going away from Jose Villa's account and just back to the Fujifilm Pro film account, you can see that general usage of it, and we've got a post here. What's this about? All right, and this pretty much sums it up. It's a funny comment here. What are you guys thinking? Film is continuing to grow and you discontinue a favorite. So that pretty much sums it up in a nutshell as to one side of the reaction to this film being lost. And someone in the comments just mentioned that their reason for not using it was that they found it way too expensive, which is really interesting because I think it really depends on which part of the world you are and where you're buying your film from, because one of my main reasons for using 400H when I did was that it was cheaper than buying Portra, at least in 120. And I don't know how much more the recent Kodak price rises contributed to that. Portra prices went up massively. I always found that Fuji 400H I could get for a better price, especially online, than Portra 400. Portra 160, I found that I could get it for a similar price maybe. That's always a little bit cheaper for some reason. But generally speaking, especially, of course, if you're in Japan, I know here in Australia, it was the case too, but 400H was a cheaper option than Portra, which was why I like getting it, especially in the 5-pack of the 120 film. So interesting point there. It's not always the same depending on the demographic. Janina, hi from Liverpool. Hello. I've recently tried it. Honestly, became my favorite instantly. Yeah, for a lot of people, that was the reaction. UK, it is cheaper than Portra 400. Okay, so there you go. There are different parts of the world where it varies in price. I think in North America, it may have always been more expensive. I know for a fact that in 35mm, it tended to be quite expensive in some stores. The manufacturer suggested retail price was something like 25 Australian dollars a roll, which is ridiculous. But I could find it pretty easily for $16 a roll online, which is still a bit high, but it's about similar to what people charge for Portra here. Portra is probably up to 18, 19 or 20 now with the recent price rises. So it is sad to lose a film, and it wasn't the most expensive film out there, at least in my opinion, from what I've seen. So yeah, 50 Casa de Cristo saying 50 to 100% more expensive in Germany. There you go. It could be a regional thing. All Fuji Pro films are. Fair enough. Canada Fuji was cheaper. Someone in the comments again, I prefer Fuji 160 to Portra personally. Yes, definitely. I've talked about Fuji Pro 160 NS before, and I do think that film is nicer than 400H personally, but that's a different topic because that film's a lot harder to get your hands on. Not much price difference. John saying, tend to use Kodak a lot, bought more online. However, now 400H is discontinued. It'll be a shame to lose another film option, for sure. News came literally first day after I tried it. Yeah, I heard a few stories of that. And funny enough, I had just ordered a 5-pack from B&H based on just a rumor that it was going to get discontinued. And it wasn't confirmed yet. It was some weird rumor that went around, and I thought, oh, that reminds me, I might as well buy another box just in case. And then the news actually came out the next day. So luckily I managed to actually just get one Pro pack before it sold out almost immediately when the announcement was made. Bananarama, trying to get my film from Perth to rural WA is expensive either way, sadly. Yeah, so that's always a limitation as well. Just bought 3 rolls of Portra 400, 120 by accident. I'm new to film. Well, that's a good film to buy by accident. All right. Yeah, going back to that. So people are upset. Film is growing, and yet they discontinued it. But in reality, it all comes back down to the fact that, you know, Fuji has been doing this. It's not surprising for Fuji to be discontinuing film stocks. They did it with Acros, even though many people loved that. It was their only black and white stock. But it just was surprising that they discontinued this one before discontinuing others like Superior 400, because they've been gradually discontinuing a lot of the Superior line and the different variations of it. But this one I thought was relied on by more photographers and therefore would be one of the last ones to go. So will it come back? Do I think it'll come back? Because as someone mentioned in the comments, Fujifilm Acros made a resurgence. They discontinued it and then they bought it back. But do I think that'll happen with Fuji 400H? I don't think so. It's possible. I think it may. But here's the reasons why I think you shouldn't count on it coming back. Because even though they bought Acros back in the form of Acros 2, that was pretty clearly outsourced to Ilford in the UK. I think, personally, it's easier to give the formula for a black and white emulsion to a massive black and white specialized company like Ilford, who is very active, who produces a lot of different emulsions, and have them produce the film, put it out, call it Acros 2, sell it, and it's pretty much the same thing, not too many differences. Whereas with something like Fuji 400H with the supposed 4th color layer, and that being the reason why they discontinued it, I don't think it's as easy for them to bring it back. And if they do, because if it is true about this 4th color layer being the reason they can't get the chemicals or whatever it is to produce it, then it won't really be the same either. Maybe they can bring it back as a new version and it would be different, maybe even better, with a little bit better stability in terms of, you know, contrast and scanning and whatever. But I don't know. I'm not counting on it, but that's just my opinion. That's what this video is about, sharing that opinion. But what I'd like to know is, what do you guys think? Do you think they'll bring it back in the form of Fuji 400H2? It would be cool. I would like to see that. You know, the optimist in me would like to see it come back, but I just don't know. It just seems like a really weird excuse for them to discontinue it, and that maybe there's other underlying reasons as to why they discontinued it. Maybe they're just slowly getting out of the film business. It's supposedly 1% of their income or profit or business, whatever it is, and they sell digital cameras, and even Instax probably makes them more money. But why didn't they discontinue Fuji Superior 400 and not this one? Maybe it was about that 4th color layer. So who knows? There's a lot of mystery there. I wouldn't believe it to be just as simple as the reasons they gave, but it could be. Someone is saying, I heard 400H was better for snow photography, so that's why I bought it in the first place. Yeah, I've shot it in the snow. It does work well. Because of the greenish tint, looks better than the warm tones in Kodak film. Have you ever tried that? I have tried a lot of 400H, and I'm going to show some examples of what I've had success with. Plenty of other films in C. Yep, that's a fair opinion. That's what I've heard a lot of. People aren't too fussed about losing this film on one hand. Odds are decent for it to come back since they discontinued due to raw materials, depending what they can do as a replacement. That's the thing. If it really was raw materials, that to me seems like a poor excuse. And it's sort of like, well, how hard can it be to procure an alternative to this chemical? We live in a very modern society, and there's so many alternatives generally to things like that. But I don't know. I'm not a film scientist. I just think that if they really wanted to keep it alive, they probably could have. That's my thoughts. I don't know about this whole 4th color layer raw materials thing. Maybe. I just question it. Just don't kill Superior 200 aka Aqua Vista. They did that a while ago, unfortunately, haven't they? Benton Lamb, I hope so. I personally prefer Fuji over Kodak, and I rather liked 400H. Bernard Degan. Hello and congratulations from Toronto. Thank you. Thank you very much. But yeah, that's my thoughts. I'm not counting on it coming back. I don't have much of it left. Probably have less than 2 boxes in 120, and I have 3 rolls in 35mm. And it was a nice film. I did like using it. I was one of those people who thought, wow, this is one of those films that I would always turn to for certain things, like using it for wedding portraits. And when I wanted that really flat look or something that would lend itself nicely to a lot of blues and greens, because as someone has said, that was the strength of it. So I'll just jump into Lightroom and just show you some of the stuff that I picked out just to show my experience with 400H. And here you can see on the Instagram page again for the hashtag 400H, a general look of what you can expect when this film is used well. When it's used well and scanned well, it's not terribly green or bad looking. It's quite nice, and it really depends on the light you shoot it in, if we're to believe that all of these are 400H. But anyway, I'll show you some of my examples in Lightroom here. And what I've got here is mostly 120. And this is probably the most recent roll, or shot from a roll I shot most recently on a family session. And as you can see, it just lends itself quite well to skin tones. I'm looking at the live stream preview, and I think it looks a bit different. So what you may be seeing might look quite different. It looks even more flat and desaturated than what I'm seeing on my calibrated monitor off on the left here. But it should give you a general idea. And just as I scroll through these, just to at least give you an idea of the type of stuff I would use 400H for. This one being in the Contax 645N. Again, same thing at a wedding, really useful for the bridal portraits and stuff like that. If you want that pastel look, not too much contrast, using it on weddings in golden light. This one here is underexposed, but just sort of shows you, I picked this out just to show that it doesn't always need to be overexposed, but it doesn't look as good as when you overexpose it. This one probably shot at 200 and metered for the shadows. This one, I was losing light and it's underexposed, but it can look a bit muddy and green in the shadows when that happens. So that may be why a lot of people didn't like it, is exposure issues. Yes, Coops is in the comments. Nice. So that was Cooper at his wedding. And it's funny enough, he's in the live stream saying, damn, who's that good looking guy? Exactly. So that's a beautiful example of 400H. I know that's a film that you liked a lot as well, and that I'm sure you're probably a bit sad to see go. But yeah, another slightly underexposed shot on 400H. This one in the 6.7 of Sarah. And you can see it works well with blues and greens and those tones, as people kind of say. And an older shot on the 6.45. It can be used quite nicely, and it had a distinct look that is now gone. That's why I think people like myself will miss the film, even though, you know, I'm going to move on. It's not the end of the world. But yeah, it will be missed, and it would be nice if they can bring it back, although I doubt it. Another thing I found it handled really well is obviously overexposure. If you have strong backlight, so even if you're not intentionally overexposing, but you have a really, really bright background, the film holds up. You still have beautiful detail in the highlights. Whether it's a blown out sky, it doesn't completely blow out. You've still got some blues there. You know, backlit shots like this one work well. This one, the shot of me that Robin took on the 6.7, that's what I really liked about it. It can handle a lot of light, and it loves having a lot of light. Just trying to catch up on some of these comments. It's quite a lot. Someone saying didn't like it in 35mm. Yep. Generally, it wasn't as nice in 35mm. I also found that. What's up, Cooper, man? When's that next video dropping, man? You said you're going to put stuff out regularly. I saw your one video for the year. You got to see more. Just don't kill. I read that one. Was film photography always this expensive? It's a bit over the top. It can be. Probably won't see Kodachrome ever again. Chemistry rather nasty for the environment. That could have been a factor. Could have been an environmental thing. It just seems weird, like the 4th color layer. They used to use that in Superior 400, and I don't know if they still do. Obviously, I thought that they were still using it, but seemingly not. Otherwise, they would have discontinued Superior 400. That's what I thought Superior Extra stood for, extra color layer. But somehow that's still alive. I wouldn't be surprised if that goes next, though. I saw earlier someone mentioned 400H not working in a Kiev. It's really weird. Yeah, maybe it's the backing paper. No, gaming, Soviet cameras, shoot groups, dad life, trying this afternoon to get one done. Cool, man. Looking forward to it. Actually, I was going to ask you, how's that Pacific image scanner going for you? The XAS or whatever it's called. I've had people ask me what a good 35mm batch scanner is, and I always point them to your video. And I'm just wondering how it's holding up after a couple of months, because I'm curious about that. And I think you're completely on the money when you say it's one of the best options right now. If anyone hasn't seen it, go check out Shoots with Coop's channel. And it's a really underappreciated scanner, I think, because it's, I think, on special on B&H for $500 US now. And the exchange rate for Australia is great. And it makes a great alternatives to flatbed scanners if you're shooting just 35mm. So I think definitely don't sleep on that scanner. 55 rolls in, works great, only issue is the dust getting in. Yeah, fair enough. But if you watch Coop's video, he's got some good tips on the dust using the Ziploc bag method, and I kind of talked a bit about that in my last video as well, about film and dust and whatever. Backing paper was thinner, also had numbers burned into the image on the last frame. I think that's just down to certain batches and defects. That can happen with any film. It's happened with a lot of Kodak film, which was defective from the factory. Could be heat issues. So I don't think it was inherent to 400H causing the numbers and backing paper to imprint onto the image. Could have been a bad batch. Film prices in the 90s were roughly the same as they are now. Yeah, fair point. Anyway, yeah, sad to see it go. I'm not going to count on it coming back. It would be nice. These are the kind of shots I used it for. When I knew there would be blues and greens and sea tones and stuff like that. Editorial shots, I would use it. This one for a musician for a magazine. This one for the same magazine for an author. Shots like this really lended itself well to certain types of skin tones. And of course, the blues and greens of the environment, therefore being pretty good for landscape shots and things like this as well, if you like that flatter look with less saturation. But when the sun is out, when the sun is strong, it can work really well in shots like this one also. You guys are seeing that image, aren't you, of the post box? Cool, yep, should be. But someone mentioned 35mm, and I just want to show a few shots on 35mm where it can work quite well. You just have to treat it the same and give it more light, more exposure. I set the meter, whether it's a physical meter or if I'm just using Sunny 16, to 200, and then try and meter and get shots like this one. This was 35mm on the Leica MA with, I can't remember which lens. This one here would have been the Zeiss Biogon 50, 400H, 35mm, and I will be doing a review on that lens very soon. It might be the next video that I drop on the channel. And yeah, again, works well for portraits, works well backlit, giving it plenty of light, plenty of exposure. And another shot here, which is quite an old one, but again, those beautiful blue greens, and it can also be quite nice for warm tones. This was in the Nikon FE shot quite some years ago. I knew you weren't giving the MA back. Of course not, yeah. Anyway, so that's my thoughts on 400H. Let me know what you think, especially if you're watching this post-stream. Have a read through some of those live comments if you want to see other people's opinions. It's always interesting to hear, at least I think, what people think of it. I was quite surprised when I heard some of both the backlash and the apathy to this film being discontinued on both sides. So next thing I wanted to talk about, which is the second part of the title, I'm just going to switch back to this other view, was the Contax TVS and my first impressions of it. So I recently picked up this camera on eBay Japan. I'd actually been thinking about getting one of these for a while because I always thought it was something that was slept on, that was not as appreciated as the Contax T series with the prime lenses, like the T2 and 3 and whatever. But these were slowly starting to steadily rise in price. So I thought I want to sell a bunch of point shoots that I don't use. I have about 3 still that I want to sell. Some of them I picked up at op shops for really good prices, and I just service them or fix the light seals and have them working again, and I can sell them off, and that money will go towards the what I've spent on the TVS. Because I figured, why have too many point shoots? I want one good zoom point shoot and one good prime lens point shoot, which is one of my Olympus point shoots with the f2.8 lens. This one, however, in my opinion, is one of the best zoom, if not the best zoom point and shoot cameras that you can get. And yeah, so far I'm really liking it. So I'm going to show you some images I've taken with it while I talk about it. And if you're not familiar with this camera, it was a very high-end camera when it came out. I think the price was something close to $1,000. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it was quite a high-priced camera when it came out in the 90s. Did it come out in the 90s? Probably late 90s, I'm guessing, just based on the design. I don't think it came out in the early 2000s, but maybe the later versions of it did. The one I have is the TVS one. So there were different iterations of it. But basically, it's a zoom point and shoot camera with an f3.5 to 6.5 variable aperture and a 28 to 56 mil lens, which extends using this manual ring here. Now, it's a great camera, but the elephant in the room about this, and generally Contax cameras, is the susceptibility to breakage and the inability to get them repaired. So I knew that going in. But even though I knew that going in, as soon as I bought it, a lot of the commentary was that be careful with that camera. I owned it for one roll and it broke. Or some people would say I owned it for 2 rolls and it broke. Or had it for like a month and it stopped working. And the typical issue that comes up with them is electronic issues, obviously. And especially the flexible ribbon cable that controls the lens. So the flex cable inside the lens, the zoom lens that would move back and forth when you extend the lens. And yeah, I mean, when you buy something like this, I think you just have to buy one knowing that going in. And that's just a part of it. It's kind of like a gamble. It's a Russian roulette owning a Contax, I think. So, so far so good. I've had 2 rolls go through it. It's still working. And even when I bought it, I mainly intended to use it at 28mm. So at 28mm, that's when the lens is just popped out minimally from the off position. And that's one of the best features of this camera. There's not many good point and shoot cameras that have a 28mm lens. And it's 3.5 at 28mm, which is great. There's the Fuji class and cameras like that. But if you use this as a 28mm point and shoot, especially for things like street photography and documentary, if you like shooting 28mm, it's a great option. You can treat it like a prime lens point and shoot if you like. And Chris Visser's in the comments here for the TVS talk. Chris Visser, go check out his Instagram. He's taken some great photos with this camera. He's I think big on this camera too, even though I think you got a T2 or something recently. He was one of the reasons I was encouraged to get one of these. I saw great shots that people were taking with this camera, including Chris's ones and other people. Someone had showed me one once in person and I really liked the build of it. I have pretty big hands, so it's pretty big for a point and shoot, but it probably looks tiny in my hands. So it's a beautiful looking camera. And I know I'm all over the place here, but going on with the features, some of the best things are you've got that 28mm wide end of the lens, f3.5 aperture, which is great. One of the best things I like about it, and one of the reasons I bought it, is that you have manual control of your focus if you need to override the focus. So there's a little dial down there that you can change focus. So if you know that the autofocus system might get tripped up, you can change it manually and you get a confirmation from the camera if it agrees with you. Other great thing is you have manual aperture control on the lens. So at the front of the lens, there's the sort of a classic sort of aperture click there, which is great as well. Not many point and shoot cameras have something like that. And you also have things like exposure compensation up here, meaning you can easily set a couple of stops of overexposure or underexposure if you're going to push your film. And just great features like that. It's got good autofocus, nice viewfinder, pretty silent operation. There's a stupid panorama mode, which I don't use, and I don't know if many people use. It just puts a couple of masks down. And yeah, it's got a built-in flash, and I think it's a great camera. It's underappreciated. It's probably more capable than the Contax T2 and 3 series in some ways because of the aperture control and stuff like that. But it does have that susceptibility to just dying all of a sudden. So that's the summary of the Contax TVS. Someone saying get a Kardashian to pick one up, price fixed. Yep, I hope not. Maybe Kendall Jenner will switch to TVS and then T2s will go down in price. That would be really cool. Viva la Film. Hi Hashem. Hey Jess, how you going? Thanks for joining on a stream. Wasn't TVS more expensive than T2 when it came out? I agree that it's been slept on for sure. It may have been. And if it's true that they actually cost $1,000 or US or whatever when they came out, that's insane. Chris saying, I actually love shooting at 56mm. I actually sold the T2, prefer the TVS. That's crazy, man. I'm really surprised because a lot of people think that the T2 just has the hugely superior lens on it, but that's interesting to hear. And I'm actually interested to hear, Chris, how many rolls do you think you've put through with yours? Have you really babied the camera? And do you tend to use the zoom back and forth a lot? Because from what I've sort of guessed is that would put a lot of wear on the lens, just, you know, moving that zoom lens in and out a lot and using it at 56mm, whereas it might just be down to luck and how worn out the ribbon is or the flex cable prior to when you purchased it. I got mine in fairly good condition. It was listed, you know, in really nice condition, and it cost about 500 Australian dollars with shipping. So yeah, it's gone up since they came out. It's gone up since a few years ago when film wasn't really going as gangbusters, but it's still way cheaper than a T2 or T3. So if I sell a few point and shoot cameras for a few $100, I think it's worth the investment, even though it's probably just going to die someday. All I would take is for one company to make a replacement ribbon cable for the Minilux T2 TVS. Everyone will be sorted. Cooper, I think there actually is a ribbon cable that you can buy for the TVS from China, from AliExpress or some of those companies. It's just really, really hard to replace, apparently. I even looked into that before buying this in anticipation that if one day I wanted to repair it, could it be done? And it seems extremely hard, like to take it apart, take the cable out and replace it. But some people have had success doing it. It just seems like you need a lot of experience repairing cameras. TVS is great, but I don't love the aperture ring. It is a bit small. That's a fair point. John, I have info from a reliable source on the TVS. The early production models had the ribbon breakage problem. After a couple of years, they repaired many of them, so it may not break. Okay, so it could have been a batch thing. Maybe there's certain serial number ranges that someone could look up. That would be really good to know if anyone is going to think about buying one of these, is to try and look for a later serial number, if that is true, what John's saying. Seems like a generic ribbon cable could be made to fit it. Yeah, so the cable, the part isn't the issue. It's actually replacing it. I've looked at someone on YouTube and the intricacy of the lens assembly and actually taking it apart. It's not easy. I thought it might be because I fancy myself as someone who doesn't mind replacing and fixing little things on cameras, but this is not a little fix. You could spend a whole day or two doing it. How much in UK Great British pounds? Not too sure. I think maybe 300 pounds, £200-300, if my conversion guess is right. Chris, I haven't babied it. I use the zoom a lot, probably shoot at 56 the most. Bought it near mint from Japan. It was $220 US. I probably put 50 or so rolls through it. Yeah, nice. Good to hear. So they can be reliable. They can be completely reliable. And obviously people who've had one break on them have been quite unlucky. And they're the ones you're going to hear from more than people who've just been using it for years and not really talking about it too much. But I'll update you if and when it breaks. Hey from North Carolina, hello. Okay, yeah, so that's pretty much the two main topics in the video I wanted to cover. I've covered the Fuji 400H discontinuation, my thoughts on that. The impressions of the Contax TVS. I really love using it for the features that I mentioned earlier that it has on it, and the photo quality, which is what I'm going to end on, just to show you some of the photos I've taken with the TVS here in Lightroom. So I've only shot 2 rolls through it, so I don't have way too many. Sorry guys, I think I might have lost the screen here a bit. Okay, you should be able to see it again. But yeah, I just picked out some of the favorite shots from the 2 rolls I've shot so far over New Year and such. And the lens actually seems quite nice. It is a bit soft when you shoot it wide open, and it does have a bit of a hazy blooming to the highlights, which is common with a lot of lenses in general and with shooting film. But those are the only, I think, drawbacks to the lens. There's a bit of vignetting and sort of softness wide open, but that's sort of to be expected. The way it renders though is really nice, and you can kind of have a look through some of these images here. Get rid of those sidebars. Yeah, it renders quite nicely. Soft in the corners, as you can kind of see there. This was low light, so I probably would have had this set f3.5 wide open. Indoor shot here. It's got a nice rendering to it. It's got a unique look, and sometimes you would look at the images and not really guess they were from a point and shoot, but at the same time, you can sort of see it leaning that way. But there's plenty of detail. If I zoom into this shot, which would have been a little bit more stopped down, maybe 5.6 f8, and there's nice detail in this on Fuji C200. And the way it renders is quite nice. There's a good softness to it. And I'll just go through some more shots here. Another TVS owner, ribbon broke after 3 rolls just before this Christmas. Yeah, that's unfortunate. And that's what scared me, what continues to scare me every time I pick up this camera. Waiting for lockdown to leave so I can get to a repair shop. Yeah, good luck with that, because I know it's very hard to find someone who will repair it, but hopefully more people will be able to repair it. This one of Sarah skating, just showing how well it works with the ability to either use the autofocus or the manual focus. I think I preset the focus distance on this one to 3 or 5 meters, waited for her to skate into my path, took the shot. So it's nice to have that control on a point and shoot camera, something that you can stick in your pocket, which I was doing at the time, had it in my pocket while going for a skate. And another shot here, just showing the really nice way this lens can render. And I think I don't mind a bit of that vignette and softening around the corners, and you can see it's not too bad. This one's on Portrait 800, I think, or it might have still been the Fuji C200. Now I can't remember. But yeah, another shot. You can kind of see if you shoot into bright light, into these really bright highlights, you can get a bit of that haziness from this lens, especially wide open, but I don't mind that look, especially with the type of photos I'm taking on a point and shoot camera. Another shot here. Yeah, I really like it. So it's not bad. It's a zoom lens, but it works well. And it's a zoom on a point and shoot, which often can look really bad, but this one actually does really well. This is my favorite shot taken on this camera so far. It's just a portrait of Sarah taken at the 28mm end of the lens at f3.5. So you can see wherever your subject is in the middle is going to look really nice and sharp. The way the film handles the contrast and color of the scene is beautiful. And yeah, I can't complain really. When I got shots like this back, I highly recommend it. So if you're thinking about getting a really good point and shoot camera, you don't have to go for the Contax T if you don't mind a zoom lens, especially if you just think about it as a 28mm. You just pop it open and you can shoot at mostly 28 and 35 like I do. And it performs quite nicely. You won't lose light from the aperture. And the other great thing about having all that control with the pre-focusing, for example, if you like to zone focus when you shoot street, is you can use this camera for a bit of sneaky street photography. You can set it to 1 or 2 meters. You can have the aperture stop down. You can have fast film in there, shoot a bit of street. This isn't an example exactly of that, but it is an example of the way you can use it. You've got 28mm, which is great for that type of documentary photography, and the ability to pre-focus, where you can quickly take a shot, because generally a point and shoot autofocus will slow you down, whereas with this you have that option. There is still a bit of a shutter lag, but you can use it for quick snaps like this before getting noticed, if that's the kind of photography you're looking to do. Same thing with the last shot here. And you can kind of see that little bit of softness around the edges, but still pretty good performance for a point and shoot camera. And that nice 28mm angle, I think it's nice to have that on a point and shoot camera. So yeah, those are my shots, my favorites so far with the Contax TVS. Let me know your thoughts. Would you watch a review on this camera? I've kind of just done a mini review already, but yeah, if you think you'd like to see a full review on this camera on the channel, let me know, especially if you're watching this later on, because that way I can go back through the comments and just sort of gauge if people are interested in a review of this. Just checking comments again. Pedro. Pierre from Triple P Camera seems like a safe bet for these kinds of electronic repairs. At least from his IG feed, there's a fair amount of 80s, 90s point and shoots that he's repaired. Yeah, so anything can be done if you especially can get hands on the parts, but it takes a fair bit of skill. John, I have a UV filter and lens hood on mine, works well. Yeah, so I didn't have the hood. Mine didn't come with the hood. That could explain a bit of that sort of glare that I have in my images. I didn't even have a UV filter on yet, and having UV filter with film actually can make a difference if you're shooting hazy scenes, because it's not really required with digital sensors, but on film you can reduce a bit of that haze in shots like this one, which I'll just switch back to. where the UV filter might have cut a little bit of that softness, so to speak. However, since these two rolls, I did buy a UV filter. Yeah, I had bought it on eBay and it just arrived. It's a little Hoya filter. So I put that on now and maybe I'll see if it makes any difference to the performance, because it actually acts like a tiny little bit of a hood as well, this filter. But yeah, those are my thoughts. It's a great camera. Yeah, checking back in the comments. Greetings from North California, Napa Valley, wine country. Nice. That's such a nice area from what I've seen in photos, especially the light you guys get up there. Sure, it'd be cool to see some more info on this camera in a review. Yeah, maybe when I've shot more stuff through it and just see if more people are interested in a review. I'd like a full review in comparison with others such as Olympus Mu. Is that how you spell it? MJU is how you would spell that, Olympus Mu. Yeah, I don't have the Mu myself, but I have an Olympus AF Super, which has the same 35mm f2.8 lens as the Mu 1 or Mu 2. So I could do a comparison between those two maybe someday. Anyway, I hope you guys are all doing well. Thanks for joining on this stream. As I've mentioned with a lot of streams, they can be a bit ranty and rambly and long. So I think I'm going to end it there. If you have watched this post-stream, I applaud you for sticking through it this long. And let me know your thoughts. If you want to join the ongoing discussion, I've got a link to the Discord server in the description of this video. It's a great place to jump online every now and then, see what people are talking about, join the discussion, conversation about different topics. I've got different channels within the Discord server, such as a technical support channel where you can, reach out if you have issues or questions about film and cameras and developing and things like that. There's a photo critique channel. There's just a photo jump channel. There's photo dump channel where you can just dump photos and comment on each other's photos. And the critique, I think, is a really good one where you can actually ask for feedback on your photography, something that's lacking on Instagram, I find. And just other useful channels like that. And it's really been growing lately. It's another place to organize things like meetups, whether it's here in Melbourne or with each other, if you're in different parts of Australia or maybe even the world, if the channel grows. But yeah, check that out. Discord server invite is in the description of this video. I hope you've been well. The next video, I'm thinking of doing the Zeiss 50mm sonar review for the Leica system. And yeah, not really much else to say, so I think I'll end it there. Ranty is fine. Thanks for the stream. Thanks for watching. Thanks for the stream. I hope 400H gets reformulated. That's a good hope to end the video on. All right, guys, I'll see you in the next video.